Happy day. In today's lecture, we will understand about the importance of history of Indian journalism. Now, why history? As media students, it's very important for us to understand the rich legacy behind Indian journalism. In today's context, journalism has a clear-cut definition, the process of gathering, verifying and presenting news to the public. But have you ever imagined how journalism developed to such a huge profession, or how journalism gained the status of being the fourth pillar of democracy? That is exactly what we will be learning from today's video. You will learn the importance of knowing history, and you will also understand the development of journalism over the years, understand journalism in the role of a reform movement and its role in Indian independence struggle, and we will also get to know about some of the milestone events that has happened over time. Now, how did everything begin? We must understand that the curiosity of getting to know what is happening around us has been with humans since birth. And this exact psychological reason can be seen as why people started to gather news. The origin of press can be traced back to the development of organized societies. What do you mean by organized societies? Example, the tribal society. Now, the meetings organized by these tribal communities, the discussion on certain policies, or the action that was taken against a member of the clan, etc., can be seen as the basis of news. Now, how did this spread? Now, when they wanted to communicate the will of the tribal chief, that is the announcement that was made by the tribal chief to the rest of the members of the clan or to the opposite clan, that is the enemy clan, they started to communicate. Now, history shows that there were both verbal and non-verbal communication back then. Now, this can be seen as the basis in which news started to disseminate. Now, how did journalism develop in ancient India? Now, we must understand that in the olden days, news basically travelled by word of mouth. And when it came to the kings had their own sources of news. What do you mean by own sources of news? It was either messengers or proclamations. So, I am taking the movie example Jodha Akbar as an example. So, when the king wanted to convey an important information to a particular kingdom, he sent his own messenger to the kingdom directly. And the messenger carries an edict, which was basically an official announcement that was made by the king. So, he goes to the place directly and reads out the message. So, this was one way in which news was disseminated. And the other way was proclamation. So, I am taking the movie Thiruvilayadal as an example, and in this particular scene, we can clearly see how people were gathered by using the sound of the drum. So, when people immediately heard the sound, they gathered, and once people were gathered, the messenger read out the important information. In this case, it was about a competition that the king wanted to inform to his people. Now, when it came to how kings gathered news, it was of two types. So, the general news was discussed with his council of ministers in the courtroom. So, the news was relating to any development or about any problems that were happening in his empire. And when it came to news, secret news, there were secret news agencies back then, that is clearly spies. So, I am taking the Iravathi Moonram Pulikesi movie as an example, and in this particular scene, you can clearly see that the character Otrin denotes that secret information was gathered and delivered to the king directly. So, spies was one of the most important ways in which kings gathered news. Now, how are we able to understand all that? That is because of the excellent documentation that the journalists did back then. So, news was inscripted in the walls of the temples, through copper plates, victory coins, etc. Now, thanks to all those journalists that now we are able to understand what happened clearly back then. Now, what the kings did, the laws or the action against the citizens, the king's achievements, etc., was the basic staple diet of news back then. Now, how did we get newspapers all of a sudden? In order to understand that, we will have to go to Europe. The origin of Indian journalism, or the origin of journalism itself can be clearly understood by studying Europe. Europe is considered as the birthplace of journalism, and even there newspaper was not an overnight product. It had to undergo series of evolutionary process. There were town criers, wandering minstrels were there, and then came corantos, diurnals, newsletters, news books, and then newspapers. And for journalism to have developed, we must understand printing. So, it is Johann Gutenberg who built one of the earliest printing machines in Mainz in the 15th century. Now, this invention by Johann Gutenberg was considered revolutionary because it sparked the development of journalism to other places. So, the pamphlets or the news resources were printed in large numbers and eventually led to a wider reach. Now, how did we get newspapers all of a sudden? That is, how did India get its first newspaper? Now, we must understand that we were under the British rule for almost 200 years, and we lost so many things, and at the same time we gained so many things. So, newspaper came to India as an alien product as one of the benefits of British rule, and James Augustus Hicky as the distinction of launching the first newspaper in India, and it was called as the Bengal Gazette or the Calcutta General Advertiser. Now, it was simply called as Hicky's Gazette also. Now, though this was the first newspaper in India, it was not an amateur paper because it was a well-crafted paper, and in fact, Hicky described this paper to be a weekly political commercial paper which was open to all but influenced by none. Now, this Bengal Gazette was seen as the forerunner to so many other newspapers and journals that were brought in Calcutta, which is considered to be the birthplace of Indian journalism. Now, gradually journalism started to develop. So, in the 19th century in India, journalism was used as a tool of education. And unfortunately, back then, we had so many social evils in our society, like child marriage, sati, etc. Now, social reformers who were basically journalists started to understand the power of press. They had so many newspapers, they had so many journals through which they started to communicate these social evils and educate people on these grounds. So, one key social reformer was Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Now, we know Raja Ram Mohan Roy is the founder of Brahmo Samaj, or who played an important role in the abolition of sati. How did he do that? It was through his newspapers and journals. So, Sambat Kaumudi, that is Moon of Intelligence, and his Persian paper Miratul Akbar, that is Mirror of News, played an important role in abolishing so many social evils. Now, thanks to all these social reformers, including Gopal Rao Hari Deshmukh, Behram Malabari, or Karson Das Mulji, Dadabhai Naoroji, that so many social evils that were present in the society back then has been eradicated right now. So, they fought against caste oppression, they fought against sati, they also fought against so many social evils, they advocated for so many social rights, including political awareness, educational reforms, widowhood, remarriage, etc. Now, in this particular movie, Maharaj, which is now streaming in an OTT platform, we were able to understand the life story of Karson Das Mulji, who was basically a social reformer and a journalist. So, he fought against the exploitation of the women in his own community, and the exploitation was made by the priests of the own community. The case was commonly called as the libel case. So, this clearly denotes how journalism or the power of press was used back then. And another movie, Shyam Singha Roy, also denotes how the hero of the movie clearly fought against the Devdasi system by using the power of press. Journalism took another phase with the revolt of 1857. What is this revolt of 1857? This revolt was also commonly called as the First War of Independence, which sparked the want of independence among our civilians. Now, what was the role of the Indian press? The Indian press, especially in Madras, Calcutta and Bombay, they took interest in this mutiny and they started to gather resources. They inspired so many people, thousands of people were inspired by the message that was delivered by the Indian press. This particular series, Hira Mandi, which is again streaming in an OTT platform, clearly shows the role of Tawaifs who participated in the freedom struggle. And the character Bibo John was part of a community who owned a press, and these people inspired the other civilians to come and join the movement, and that is exactly how Tajdar, the character, joins the independence struggle by getting inspired by the power of press. So many social reformers who were basically freedom fighters, including Bala Gangadhara Tilak, inspired people through their newspapers like Kesari and Maharatha. He claimed that Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it. How inspiring are those words? If it's inspiring right now, just imagine the inspiration it would have brought back then. Now, at the same time, we should also see the advent of the Hindu in the southern presidency of Madras. So, in 1878, the Hindu was born with the efforts of G. Subramania Iyer and 6 other men. Now, the Hindu is one of the products of this nationalist movement, and it advocated for so many social evils, or the eradication of so many social evils, and it also fought for the Indian independence struggle. Advent of Gandhi as a journalist. Now, we all knew Gandhi as a freedom fighter. We all know him as the father of our nation. But how many of us know that Gandhi himself was a hardcore journalist? He believed in the power of press. He believed in the power of writing. Even before he came to India, while he was in South Africa, he was editing the paper called The Indian Opinion. The advent of Gandhi in the political scenario in India sparked a change of attitude in the Indian press. So, the period between 1919 and 1947, that is the period from when he became the official leader of the Indian independence struggle until we gained independence, there was a great change in the Indian press. You know, it was like an army that was marching under the command of a leader. You know, the Indian press was dominated by Gandhi's message. Now, Gandhi had his own publication. He was editing Young India, and he had Harijan in 1932, Navjeevan in 1932. Now, all these publications itself has so many hidden stories that beautifully exhibits the role of Gandhi as a journalist. So, while Gandhi was editing Young India, he strongly believed that any paper should survive based on their subscription and not on advertisement. So, when he noticed that the subscription count of Young India was going down, he immediately told that I am not really fond of editing this paper, but I am doing this for my friends, for my civilians in the Madras presidency. And if you want me to continuously write for Young India or edit for Young India, you will have to subscribe to the Young India. And this one message was simply enough for the subscription count of Young India to rise. And it was not just simply hundreds. The subscription rate increased by thousands, and we are able to clearly understand the power, or the power Gandhi had back then. Gandhi also believed in the idea of a free press. So he was not open to any restrictions. In fact, he would close down his paper than to abide by the rules and the regulations. So Britishers were not really fond of the idea of journalism or journalists. So they simply wanted to put down the press. They wanted to introduce so many press regulations, etc. And for the 3 consecutive articles that once Gandhi wrote in Young India, he was arrested for sedition. So this clearly denotes again how Gandhi was open to free press, and he was not for the idea of press restrictions. Now, why was Gandhi known as a hardcore journalist? That was simply because he was never artificial. He was very simple, yet his writing style was very effective. He opened out his heart to his people, and millions of readers were waiting every day, every week to read Gandhi's message. So far, we've understood that journalism was not just a mere profession. It was more than that. It was a change agent. It was used so much to create positive change in the society, and it played an important and vital role in the Indian independence struggle. And thanks to those journalists that the legacy has now been passed to you, we are now enjoying a free press. Freedom of press is an important pivotal part of the Indian press, and that legacy or that responsibility has now been given to media students like you. So it's your responsibility to take this rich legacy forward. And in the next lecture, we will understand in detail about the centenarians who again played a pivotal role in the development of journalism.